All right, so picture this. You just finished your 8-year drug scandal. You were trading all the drugs in the world, making millions and millions of dollars. But as it all goes, you were caught by the FBI. You're going to prison for a long, long time. You've never been before. So picture what it's like. Is it anything like this? Bodies on bodies stacked on top of each other? Probably not. But this is Rikers Island, New York, where conditions like this is what you can expect. It's everyday life. So here's a quick idea on Rikers Island, if that didn't sum it up enough.
Rikers Island.
Photos obtained by the New York Post last fall show detainees jammed in the intake area.
So as I
Lozano
said, these
says
are the
he
type of
spent
conditions
weeks
that go down.
living like this.
Feces all over the wall, unoperable restrooms, toilets were not flushed, the sinks would not work. It was disgusting.
And you might be surprised who agrees.
Here's another video on more about Rikers Island.
NBC News recently obtained more than 100 hours of surveillance video from inside Rikers. Scenes like this, an attempted knifing averted by an officer, and an inmate organized so-called fight night, where some detainees were forced to participate.
Who was running the place?
The inmates run the facilities.
The footage came to light as part of a lawsuit brought by the New York County Defender Services on behalf of a client.
See, a big part about that video is when the interviewee stated that Rikers Island is ran by the inmates. You're gonna tell, and I mean, if that wasn't enough to already get it in your head that they do run the place, you'll see later on. So Rikers Island, New York. It was a 413-acre island. So it was a very big island in the East River of the Bronx, New York. Right here is exactly where it was. This is Manhattan, the Bronx. It is right in the middle of New York City. And the complex consists of 10 jails, these being one for adolescents, one for women, and the other 8 for adult male. And with this, 85% of detainees are pretrial defendants. So they haven't even gone to court and gotten a fair case yet, but they're still put in this jail, which is a reason of why there's so many inmates. I'll get into that later. And Rikers Island was once a landfill site. So knowing that, it smelled very horrid, and they have a rat problem. There's rats all over the island, which is terrifying. So behind the scenes of Rikers Island, it is ran by the New York City Department of Corrections. As you can see here, this is the sign you'll see as you're going in. Department of Corrections, Rikers Island. And they have a very big budget because of New York City's GDP of $3.4 billion yearly. Now, that might seem like a lot, but because of how massive the complex is, it costs them $2.7 billion a year to keep it running. And that's not even counting for the criminals. It is $460 per inmate daily, adding up to $168,000 per year. Here are 3 inmates just posted up. So now here is a layout of Rikers Island itself. As we can see here, this area is where the actual jail is. This is where prisoners spend 90% of their time. And there's 3 athletic fields. So they have many room to work out and hit yard time. And right here we have the Adolescent Center, as I talked about earlier, and the Women Institute. Here is the bridge that they use to get prisoners on and off the island, and as well as the infirmary, which a lot of them end up there because of all the violence. So now here comes the good stuff. Rikers incidents and corruption. So the overpopulation of Rikers Island is its biggest issue. With it being New York City's prison, that means any criminal from New York City that commits a crime goes here. With New York City being such a populated, dense area, there's so many prisoners, and we know that stuff goes down in New York City. There's so much people going in this prison. So because of that, this causes riots. Many riots throughout the whole prison. As stated earlier by that interviewer, The place is ran by inmates. Anything goes on. I mean, you have a general idea of what jail's like. Now imagine with all those prisoners, New York prisoners. And there's organized fighting systems. There's lots of gang violence. They'll set up fight clubs. And these fights can be used for food or limited goods. So they have something on the line for these fights. So they're going all out. And a couple years ago, during the COVID-19 virus, many of the guards and inmates were getting sick. But the guards, they could go home, which caused more ratio of prisoners to guards. And the prisoners, they got angry because so many of them were being packed together in these cells when they were sick in this virus. So this caused a huge riot and caused the whole island to go on lockdown. So the population, I've talked about it a little before, but I'm gonna get more into the real numbers. There's around 6,000 inmates as of 2023. And the ratio of prisoners to guards is 4-1. Now during this COVID-19 time, it was at a very high rate, just to even put that into perspective. Now with 6,000 inmates, that might seem like a lot, but it's really dropped down over the years. Just significantly, it used to be 12,000 on the island, but the island is planning to close in 2026 because of all the problems that it has. So they're getting inmates out of there slowly over time. So it's no longer at its peak and as dangerous as it once was, but it's still quite the place. So the living conditions on Rikers Island. There's 2 cell types. For the more dangerous and bad criminals, they get the basic 1 prisoner cell, which is very surprising on how they get this with all the other prisoners being jammed, packed together. For example, if someone was a pretrial defendee who was just coming in, they haven't even gotten a court case, they get put in group holding cells where it's separated by gangs in recent years. So gangs, with all the jails that are set on the prison 10, they'll separate themselves by whole jails, and this causes gang violence and territory wars. With the food, the meal plan is like any other prison. Obviously it's funded by the government, but there's a commissionary store where prisoners can go to get cigarettes and any snacks that they want, which is a pretty nice perk to this island. Alright, so programs and jobs for inmates. Starting off with teens, they have things like schooling to still keep them at where they should be educationally, recreational time to keep them active, laundry and cooking. This is just so they can pass time, earn a few extra dollars. It's a very, very, very low salary, but it's something that they can maybe use to save or spend money at, like the commissionary store. Now for the older inmates, there's college classes and real world work training. So they can use college classes to educate themselves and maybe pursue when they get out, as well as real world work training. If they want to use a skilled job or a trade as a profession, they can get the experience now and go out and use it full time. Now for the trustees, many prisoners in here, they have many mental problems because of the conditions, so there's counseling to help them with that. And there's fight and riot prevention and suicide watch and help. Many of these inmates, they do commit suicide because of all the mental issues. So moving on, we are going to talk about Rikers Island's guards and security measures. There's 1,400 guards. Now, as I said earlier with the inmates, there used to be a lot more, there's a lot less now because of the closing of Rikers Island soon. The base salary is $47,000. This is a little above average compared to other guard jobs, probably because of all the things that they go through. Now, just like any other job, you can go up depending on time spent at the prison and holiday and overtime hours. Now for their weapons, the interesting thing about Rikers Island, which I believe is why there's so much violence, is because they do not carry guns. Now they use pepper spray and nightsticks / batons to alleviate any violence. They do this because they're in fear of very dangerous criminals getting a hold of these guns, which isn't too professional because they're trained to stop them from doing this. Now guards keep watch on each facility to make sure no fights break out. This doesn't go too well as the inmates really do just run the inside of the prison. And inmates have set curfews at 10 o'clock, which is lights out. Now for our famous inmates, starting off with the one and only Tupac Shakur from West Side, California. Now in 1995, he was in East Harlem, and he was put with sexual assault charges. Now he was sentenced 1 to 4 years, and he got out a little early, around 3 years. And next up is Lil Wayne, Lil Weezy. 2008 in Manhattan, he was charged with the possession of a firearm. Now he was sentenced to 1 year, but released on 8 months due to good behavior. So with Rikers Island being such a horrid place, many question the escapes and executions. Many people do escape Rikers Island each year, but no clear numbers have been released to the press or public. With minimal guards and high amount of inmates, they swim to New York City. As Rikers Island is an island, that's the only way out. They can't make it through the bridge. It's just too well secured. Now, I believe they do this in the warmer months when the water is not freezing cold, and they prepare and make the swim across. Now, as for executions, there's never been an execution on Rikers Island. It's never had death row or anything like that, but many people do die. Just last year, 10 inmates passed away, and like I said, 5 of that being the suicide. That's 50%. So I hope this presentation helped you understand Rikers Island and just how horrid it is. Now, New York will be taking it down in around 2 to 3 years and building a new one.